good lead into the second point is when we talk about the idea of role players, um, kind of understanding like what makes different role players stick on their team. So on the one hand, it's like, okay, what does my team need, for example? And then how am I going to be able to fill that need? Like, what do I need to be? What do I need to become? Or which attributes do I have that could work right now? And this is how you start to develop the idea of like being a role player, because you get some guys that are really good at different things. Like Patrice Bergeron is one of my favorite examples. Is there like an equivalent to him that I could use? Because now that he's retired, it's hard to keep using him. Is there a Patrice Bergeron type?
Of course there is. I just off the top of my head.
So whatever.
Yeah.
If you get a guy like that, it's like, okay, if we need an offensive situation, he's there. If we need a defensive situation, he's there. If we need a strong like checking situation, he's there. It's like he's a guy that's always going, and that versatility of becoming like that role guy where it's like I can put you here, I can put you here, I can put you up, but you can play up and down the lineup. That's what they say. He could play up and down the lineup. And I think that Cass was kind of like that too for a while in his career, where he could play up with the top guys, and then he could play down the fourth line and go bump and grind and whatever. So I think there's an element of that, and being able to identify why are these certain attributes valuable. And to your point, it's like, okay, you go stop Barlow. That doesn't feel like a great accomplishment when you're 17, 18, 19 playing junior and you want to be the star. It doesn't seem like that when you're U14, 15, 16 and you want to get drafted first round. Like those are things that are not, either they're not taught, they're not emphasized, they're not stressed at those levels to, I guess, enough where people value them, or it's not rewarded enough where it's seen as actually valuable. Because this is another thing, maybe like a little bit of a criticism for coaches. Like a lot of times the coaches use the cliches of that we want this guy, we want this guy, we want this guy, but then they go around and they play this guy who maybe he's lazy, doesn't do things the right way, yada yada, but he's really offensive. And it's like, as the guy that's trying to do all the right things, it's like that's frustrating. So maybe from like the coaching perspective too, it's like that could be something that we talk about, emphasize, and try to teach at younger levels, where it's like kids learn to value that those kinds of attributes, or have identify those as ways to stand out. Because a lot of times you wouldn't think of that. Like,
well, so speaking of that, it just reminded me. I remember last year we were watching the game last year. It was the Family Day game, and actually Guelph was playing.
Was that the one with the announcer that we?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
my wife texted me during the game, and she was like, "Charlie's not playing that physical today. Like, is he hurt?" I go, "I don't think so. Maybe." He said he had it banged up a little bit, and my brother said he's not playing like normally as physical as he usually does. Like, but he's playing good, but not whatever. So I wasn't at the game. My wife was. So he came out after, and when I was watching too, I said, "Oh, he's not finishing his hits quite as much." So he came out after the game and he had the biggest smile ever. And my wife's like, "Oh, that's kind of weird." And he said, "Coach is so happy with us. He told us before the game, don't take it, like, don't run around, but your job is to shut these guys down." It was Owen Sound, actually, the top line, Barlow and all that. And they did it to a T, and they actually ended up on the plus side. So like a lot of times, like as parents and as maybe a viewer of the game that's maybe not as knowledgeable, you don't see the what's going on, right? So he was happier, the coach was happy, everyone was happy about the job of shutting someone else down, and that was how they would win that game, is shutting down their best line. So it's an important role, right? So knowing that, but like as a kid, you want to read that too, right? You got to read a little bit what your team needs, and it'll never be a bad thing to get under the skin or of the better guys.
Yeah.
Right.
And so this kind of goes back to the question of like I said at the start of like how to stand out, because I want to say this in like the least critical way possible, because I'm not trying to sound like we know and you don't know, but for people that have not played at higher levels or been around higher levels or whatever, it's hard to grasp the fact that those are actually things that make you stand out. When you're, there's the easy things, right? Work hard and you'll stand out. If you got a guy that scores, you're going to stand out. If you're a guy that can make great plays, you'll stand out. If you're a great skater, you'll stand out. It's like those are things that are obvious, and I find those are things that are, especially like the hard work thing. It's like that's something that's really emphasized, but like it can mean so many things.
Yeah, you can hard work and do nothing.
Yeah, right. So it's talking about actually how to do those small things, and that's how you can get. Like I was looking at because I was just talking to him the other day, is Zach Ronaldo. I was looking at his stats from when he played, and he wasn't like a major point guy, right? He played like 10 or 11 years in the NHL, and I'm looking at his stats, and I'm like, okay, here's an interesting question. It's like this is a guy that clearly wasn't like offensively dominant in the game. So what was it about him? And like I know the answer because I've seen him play. It's like because he had other things. So if you're watching an OHL game and all you have on is your offense rules all hat, it's like then that guy. It doesn't make sense that that guy makes it. You look
Yeah,
at
they like a guy like that gets a lot of credit for what he does, but not enough credit for what he does, right? Because someone that can get because I remember when he was playing in junior, he was like heavy hitter, heavy, like just hard to play against. Like not the biggest guy either, and he would hammer guys. So it's cool to watch. Like it's like Miggy on Guelph. He gets 6 8 heavy hits a game usually, and it's like people think, oh wow, he's just a lunch bucket guy, and that's very true. But it's like you don't understand how much that brings to the team. So when you take it to the next level, so even if you're a Bantam midget player or U16, U15 player, and that's your attribute, yeah, you will not be appreciated by the mums and dads. They'll just think you're a grinder dummy, doesn't have anything. But there's probably 20 teams in the OHL that are looking, going, okay, we need that because that's a guy that we need and we can have that for 4 years. That makes life miserable for the other team, and it's like it's yeah, it's not 40 goals, but the minutes and what he does for your team is like tremendous, and that's the difference. Is like the people that know hockey know those little things. Or you get a D that is real quiet, and you go, "Wow, he went in the second or third
right.
round. I didn't
That
see
was
him. Like
my
I didn't see
exact
him." Yeah,
next example.
but you'll
Yeah,
notice that his stick just knocks pucks away, disrupts plays all game, or he gets the puck and it's just a clean exit, or he just gets it out of the zone and it's safe, and he's not worried about he knows his role, right? You're not scoring on me, and I'm gonna get the puck out to my forwards or get it out of our zone, and it's over and over, and they just don't make mistakes doing it. And then when there's the physicality involved, maybe they add that element to it too, right? So it's not always like the offensive beauty out there. Chris Phillips was a guy that went first or second overall to Ottawa Senators years ago, and a lot of people say, well, was he really a first overall guy? But yeah, he played. I think it was like 15 to 18 years of pro hockey, and it was like just a shutdown guy, but like he's terrible to play against, right? So like, or a guy that they look like just grinders, a guy that's just good against the wall, and they can protect pucks and they keep it deep and they'll finish hits and they protect it. They just make these little plays that don't seem like a lot, but it's everything. But that's so if I'm the Edmonton Oilers now and I'm looking for I'm watching, and you've already got McDavid, you already got Draisaitl, you got whatever, but I can have that guy doing the grindy work down low. It's just like, yeah, you might not go first overall, but you're going to play a role, and that role is very important.
yeah. I like going to looking at defensemen for this question too because the standout as a forward is a lot more straightforward, right? Because it's like you can go score, you get involved on the offense. If you work really hard, it's like hard forechecks, you hit, and all these things. But if you think
Your
about
tracking looks better.
yeah,
Your
yeah,
back checking, yeah.
exactly. It all looks. There's like a sex appeal of it, right? Where it's like, okay, that looks good. But when you're that quiet defenseman guy, where it's just like, yep, you just get your stick in the lane, you just have good hits and pins, you have good box outs in front of the net, you make a good first pass, you can get up ice, right? You skate well. Like these are things where it's not as obvious, and so that's a good thought experiment to do if maybe you're having a hard time maybe grasping what we're talking about or what we're saying. You can try to think of it that way. It's like what would make somebody want a defenseman, because usually it's not offense. You're not looking to your defenseman to be your big offensive generating guy. Obviously, there's exceptions to that, but for the most part, it's like there's not a lot of Eric Carlson, there's not a lot of Cale Makar, there's not a lot of Victor Hedman, there's not a lot of that. Even in the NHL, there's not a lot of that. So what is making these guys all make it? So I think that's a little bit of a better like thought experiment you can do to answer the standout question, right?